Hi, this is Dr. Don. Let's continue our walkthrough of Lab 2. The first research question that you've got to answer is about this data literacy training program, and in order to evaluate how effective the program was, they give employees that take that training a pre-test and a post-test. Okay, and you've got to decide, is the training good based on the scores on those pre-tests, the average scores on those pre and post-tests. And we're going to use the underscores.csv file that we've got to load. So the first thing is, what type of test is this, and in which rehearse did we go through this? Then we choose the appropriate worksheet. Well, this is, as we said, is a paired samples test. So we'd use the paired samples worksheet, and that's where we would capture the code. And we're going to use the paired samples example, which is over here in Rehearse 1 under paired samples. First thing, again, as usual, is loading the packages. You know how to do that. Copy, paste that in there, run that code chunk. The next one is to inspect the data. Now, in our example, we're loading an Excel file. In your remix, you've got to load a .csv file. So what do? We can go up here into the code chunks on our Lab Manual web page, and looking at data import export, I'm going to scroll down here. There's a CSV file from a URL. That's not what we want. CSV file from the local directory. And I just copy this code, and I'm going to go back over here to Posit Cloud and paste it in the paired samples worksheet. There's the code chunk that's loaded that. So here we would paste it in and copy. Now I've gone ahead and edited this, give you a little jump start there, but you would just paste in the code that I copied off of that web page and then edit it. I'm going to use anyway, the quiz_scores is the name of my data object, reading the CSV file in from the data folder. So you've got to have the data slash. You can also have the ./data if you want the complete path there. And then the name of the data file, quiz_.csv, and then the glimpse. So I'm going to go ahead and run that. And we can see some information there. We've got 3 columns. We've got scores, which is an integer, a number there. I guess it's from 0 to 100 for the scores. And we've got 40 rows. Okay. And then we've got a categorical variable named test. And again, write this down on your notepad. And it's got pre, and I'm guessing post. If we looked at the quiz scores over here, I'm going to open it in so we can see we've got pre and post. So we've got the 2 types of test. And then we've got this third column here called diff. Now this is special that you'll see in our data sets. To use the infer package for a paired samples, we need to do some wrangling, some pre-computing. And what we did here was to go ahead and put this into an Excel. You can use R code if you wanted to. And then just calculated the difference between the pre-test score and the post-test scores for each of the 20 people, the employees who were there. And that's why we only have 20 rows here in our diff column. Now pay attention. We call it diff, which stands for difference. If we go back here to our example. Okay, I'm back in the Lab 6 Rehearse 1 example, and in there we read in the data, and we've got this diff column again there, the difference in the example between the mice weights before and after, and just 10 there. You've got a diff column that is 20 because we had 20 employees, but it's still that difference before and after. Now I'm going to jump down. You should be familiar with this part, stating the research questions, copying the code over there to do the exploratory. There's a place in your worksheet for that. Let's go on down here to where we're testing the hypothesis. And the first step And this is where you'll start, again, seeing that same pattern. We're going to use the infer package, and here there's an explanation about this diff variable. And so we're going to copy this code. I'm going to go ahead and copy that. Copied. Let's go back over to Deposit Cloud. And I'm going to go over here to my paired samples. And I'm going to go down here where we're starting the test, step 1. And you can see here, I've already pasted it in there. But what I did, I just followed these instructions that the delta observe we're going to use over and over again. So we don't change that. I'll leave that alone. That's the new data object. I put in the name of the data object that I created, quiz scores. You put in what you created if you didn't use quiz scores. And then we want to specify the response. Now this is, again, just for the infer package. We're going to use that diff variable, which already has the differences calculated, and then the stat, we're going to use the mean. So that is what you would use. All you got to do is just change the overall name of the data object and then leave delta observe alone. So we can run that and we get a difference. Then we just go down, answer the question, of course. The next one is generate the null distribution. So I want to put my code chunk there, go back over here to rehearse. Let's go down to generate the null. Here's my code chunk again. I'm just going to copy that. And let's go back in here. And this one, I haven't pasted it in yet. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste. And then follow the instructions there. When we're using the code, which is what I'm doing, don't change the null dist. That's going to be the data object that we want to use in the infer. So that stays the same. Change weights to your data set. What's the data set name? I think up here we called it, there it is, quiz scores. So I can just copy that. And back down here, I'm just going to paste that in. Whoop, don't want to paste over everything, just over the weights. So that, and then my response. In this case, we're still using the diff. I don't have to change that. And we don't change anything else. In other words, since we just changed the data set name, so all we had to do, we're going to use diff again. If you're doing it with a brand new data set that you created, you may have to use a different name. But here we're going to use diff and leave everything else alone. So we can run that. And we get our null distribution. And then we go to step 3. We go back here to my rehearse. I'm going to go down to step 3 and copy this code. And then go back here and paste it in. And again, it says when we're using it, when we reuse it, we've got to change just these titles down here. This, instead of difference in weight, I'm going to difference in pre and post test, and then change this next part. It won't be difference in mouse before and after. It would be DIFFER in pre and post. You got to be a little more careful, and then you can run this thing. Save it and then run. Okay. The next step is to calculate the p-value. Do the same thing. Jump back to our example, grab the code, make any changes. Again, on the p-value, I don't think there's any changes there. And then we make a decision. And then we write a 1-paragraph summary, which is really important, which is to summarize what are your findings of the research question. In other words, we're doing a test here about a pre and post test, and you would make a conclusion. Did the pre-test work? Were the scores better after or better before? And why are you saying that? Well, my p-value was such and such. I either did or did not reject my null hypothesis, yada, yada. Next part is calculate the confidence interval. Same, go back and capture your code, paste it here. I did want to talk about the traditional test just a little bit. Let's go back to rehearse 1 and go to the traditional test. We're using this. There's two in the example here. I just want you to use the traditional paired samples. You don't need to do the single sample that we do in the example. Just use this one here with the traditional test. And you can see here that we've got back to the things that we did in Lab 5. We need to use our numerical variable as a function of our categorical variable. Remember that was, let me pause this for a second. I'm going to jump back and posit cloud. And if we go back here to our quiz scores, see we've got score is our numerical variable we want to use for the traditional test, and then our categorical, our grouping variable, is test. So if we go back to that, you can see here, this is our categorical variable, a numerical variable and our categorical variable. We would just copy this, paste it in, and then edit. Same. So this is the procedure you use for the paired samples. For the ANOVA, do the same thing. We just use the ANOVA worksheet and follow through these steps again. I've already copied and pasted in. And then you would go over here to Lab 6 Rehearse 2. And I'm just going to use the ANOVA example 1. Follow through, copy, paste these code steps into your worksheet. And then, of course, the big thing is the actual Downey method. Calculate the observed statistic, copy it in, and then edit what you've got to change. In other words, we will change the data set name, and then what we're using, I think it's salaries is the quantitative variable, and then the grouping variable is going to be region. And that's all we changed there. On the null distribution, again, change the name of the data object. Again, I think it's salaries. The quantitative variable is a function of the grouping variable, which is region. And run the test. So that's the basic process. This is a long-winded video, but I hope it helps.